Have you heard of this term, the sales process? What about the term, the selling process? If I give you 10 seconds to think about what is the difference between the sales process versus the selling process, how would you explain that? So now, take 10 seconds. Get a piece of paper and try to figure out, by writing down, what is the difference between the term sales process versus the term selling process. Take 10 seconds. So I remember asking a participant one time, and I asked them, so what is the difference between the sales process and the selling process? Is there a difference? And you know, in every crowd, there's that one guy, without even thinking what the response would be in terms of sales process and selling process, this person quickly quirked and said this. Obviously, there's a difference, otherwise you wouldn't ask us. What a joke, right? But you know what? That's true. There is a big difference between the sales process and the selling process. Knowing what the differences are, knowing what the content and the context of what we're speaking about in terms of the sales process and the selling process will give you a competitive edge in everything that you do as a sales professional. So what I want to do is I want to take a couple of minutes to just give you a perspective of how I see the sales process and the selling process. Now, first off, the sales process versus the selling process is that the sales process is your business process. And what I mean by business process is this idea of what does it take from start to finish in order to close a deal and consider it a completed transaction. Meaning, how do you find your customers? How do you pitch your products? How do you pitch your solutions? How do you handle objections? How do you deliver? What are the terms of condition? How do you follow up with the customers? How do you complete the transaction by making sure that any outstanding debts are collected? And so on and so forth, and you complete that cycle. So that sales process is basically your business process. Okay? The cycle of which your business operates at. Now, the selling process, in the other hand, is actually very different. The selling process is what we call the client engagement process. It's an opportunity that either over the phone or when you're meeting up with your customers, that occasion of connection, that occasion of engagement, where you're working with your customers and you're trying to build the necessary rapport and understand what their needs are in order to be able to present in a context that actually helps the customer. So that's the client engagement. So again, the sales process is the business process. The selling process is the client engagement process, where it's either face-to-face or over the phone. Point number 2, your sales process is the science, whereas the selling process is the art. Have you ever heard of the statement, sales is about both art and science, and that you can't do with one versus the other? You actually have to have both. That's exactly what we're talking about. The business process is the science. The science of sales. It means this. It means that there is a proven formula of how things work. In math, 1 plus 1 is not 11. 1 plus 1 is 2. I mean, that's just the logic of things. That's how it works. One step comes before the other in order to have something happen. So the business process is a science behind it. If you operate it as if it was science in logic of science, you get the results that you get. Because understanding how to manage the business process in the context of science and the logic of what happens in the sequence of what needs to happen will help you become a better salesperson. Now, the selling process is a little bit different. The selling process is the art. It's the art of how you work with your customers. It's the art of how you engage with your customers. It's the art of how you connect with your customers so that you build the necessary trust so that you're able to bring your customers to understand you as a person and build that connection so that they can take that next step forward with you. So, science versus art. The last point, the sales process. What's your objective? The sales process objective is to drive this idea of velocity. Now again, velocity is a term that we use in physics to talk about speed, to talk about cycles, right? To talk about from start to finish, the whole cyclical approach towards what happens. No, the business process is about the velocity. The faster you could open the context of what you're trying to start in terms of the cycle of the business process, the faster you take through the customers through it, the faster your operational team can support it, the faster you can deliver, the faster you can end, the faster you can collect. That ends that one cycle. So that one cycle is that velocity. So can you imagine this? The greater the speed, the greater your velocity, the better your business. The quicker it is. Now, the selling process is a little bit different. Our objective is not to increase velocity, but to increase influence. Influence. Take a look. Influence is key because at the end of the day, it's not about necessarily just one step to another step to another step. Sometimes it's not the logical sequence. Sometimes it's the ability to have the influence over the customer in how you're handling that situation. So, let's summarize. The sales process is the business process. The selling process is the client engagement process. The sales process is about the science. The selling process is about the art. The sales process, the objective is to drive greater velocity. The selling process, the objective is to drive greater influence over your customer, over the situation, so that you can drive greater success, greater opportunities. I wish you all the best.